in Bangkok, Thailand, and Tampa, Florida, in the United States. This is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip, and I'm joined by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. We're here for another week. I'm here getting ready for IAPA Asia. I just came over from Japan, and I have been drinking a little bit. So we'll see how this show goes. It's late for me. It's in the evening.
See, I should just have a mimosa or something going on here because it's early for me. It's morning.
Oh gosh. Well, our first story is going to be a little bit of I don't know, less newsy and more like on the like in-person reporting type of thing. So I was in Japan previously, and I was able to get into one of the previews for Fantasy Springs. And this was not a like press thing or whatever. I just was like there, and I was like watching to see if the land would open for a testing day. And then it did. And of course, then the tickets were sold out, and it took me a while to figure out how to get in. I ended up having to get one from our hotel concierge, which was really nice of them. Shout out to them. Thank you for making that miracle happen. And so I was able to get into the park and check out the Fantasy Springs area. I did record a full walkthrough of the area that I did for Attractions Magazine. So if you're interested, we'll put that in the show notes. I wanted to more, though, talk a little bit less about like the guest side of things. You can hear my guest side in that video if you want to watch it, or you can watch it there if you're curious.
That'll be your fanboy Philip moment.
Yes, yeah, it's really fanboy. I sound so positive.
Wow.
If you want to know what that's like.
Who are you?
I'm not sure. It was crazy.
I need to watch that then. I've never seen that side of you.
I was so happy. I was genuinely, and looking back on it now, I'm like, I wish I could be like that all the time. So anyway.
You're just skipping through the area.
I was. Well, you can't. There's too many people to be skipping, but I was trying to walk fast. So I think, of course, we all know Fantasy Springs. It's the largest expansion at Tokyo Disney Sea to date. It has the areas for Peter Pan. It has Arendelle, whatnot. I think it has the actual Fantasy Spring area. There's a new hotel. There's a lot. There's 4 rides there. There's 2 restaurants. There's quick service. It's a big area. Especially the 4 rides are ones that are unique to that area, and the Arendelle area are also more unique areas that aren't at all the other properties. So it's definitely a very highly anticipated area. I will say it is beautiful. It is beautiful. There's no, we all knew it was going to be beautiful. It is a gorgeous land. I didn't get to try any of the rides because there is, even on the test days, there was a reservation system that is going to be very similar to how it's going to work. And you know what? That's one of my, I don't want to say criticisms, but as usual, it's all about them trying to manage how the guests are going to experience the land. And I think, anyway, I'll get into my main point. But anyway, I think the biggest criticism that I have that I spoke to a lot of the locals there and a few of the other people that were around and just tried to get a sense of what people thought about it versus what I was thinking about it, whatnot. And I think the biggest criticism that from the locals that I think I didn't realize at first, and then the more I thought about it, the more I totally agree with it, is that it is kind of a land that, even though it is beautiful, you can tell that it was kind of EV'd, basically. And I think the locals can tell too. And this is one of those weird traps, which is that, like, in my opinion, Tokyo Disney Sea is the most beautiful theme park in the world. It is absolutely stunning. Words, really do not do justice to Tokyo Disney Sea. But we all know the story about how it, wasn't created by Disney. It's not, it's not a Disney owned property, and how the budget was really extended because it was more of a government, local holding type of thing, and more of an investment. I think you can tell in this land that they were going at it from more of a recovery mindset. So more of a, like, we need this to make money, not like we need this to be the best thing in the world. We need it to make money. And you can tell on, like, the little things. I think, like, especially like there are some iconic areas there, but just the elevations, for example, I think a big a big piece of Tokyo Disney Sea is that like the elevations are gorgeous, and you don't see that in theme parks because it's expensive, right? But like the elevations where you go into the where you can get on the journey to the center of the earth and the 20,000 leagues and 20,000 leagues rides. You have the Nautilus there, and you have the little bay cove, and you have literally 3 stories, and you can stand there at the top of the cove and you can see all 3 stories, and you can see people on all 3 of them at the same time. You can see the Nautilus down, and so you get this landscape that you feel it because you have these layers and this depth to it. And then you randomly have a ship, just completely just sailing through, taking guests from a port to the other, and they're just randomly sailing through this mysterious island. I mean, those are and that is not anywhere in Fantasy Springs. Everything is one level, and it's built more like the American way, I guess, which is like it's flatter. It's more like the Florida way, maybe. It's like it's flatter, and when you go into Arendelle, there's castles, and there's quote unquote 2 stories, but they're all using forced perspective basically, and they're making it appear as if it's 2 stories, but it's not really 2 stories, and so and the locals can tell.
We'll call it the California adventure approach.
Yeah,
that's what it reminds me of.
It's very so I think you can tell it's very flat, right? It's very it's lacking that depth, it's lacking that budget basically. And after talking to a lot of people more about it, and some of the local reporters, it seems like this has been a trend going on, post-pandemic, to try and make the park as a whole more profitable. And a few other things to note on this is they're not selling park hoppers or multi-day tickets whatsoever at all. The only thing you can buy when you are there is a 1 park, 1 day ticket, and you just have to buy one for each park any day you want to go. So there's that, and then a lot of other little things like the for the Fantasy Springs land, you can try and get into the lottery system to get in, or you can pay to get in with the Premier Access, or you can get a guaranteed entry with the vacation packages, which start at like $3,000 a night. And for Japan right now, for the conversion, that is horrendously expensive. I mean, that is like you could spend $3,000. That would probably get you a month, maybe 2 months, maybe even 3 months of an Airbnb. But it's 1 night just to get guaranteed entry, and so you can really when looking at all these things together, you can really see how they're trying to really look at it more of a when are we going to see our return on this land kind of a thing versus I guess the long-term investment that the original ethos of the park was. But that's my.
Well, and it sounds like to me, and again, I have not seen it, and I have not even visited Disney Sea. However, I have seen quite a bit of it, and you're absolutely right, Philip. Even from the photographs that I've seen, it is world building to a whole new level.
Yeah.
It is tied so much to the sea, which
Yep.
this area is less tied to.
Yes.
To me, it sounds like what they did to Epcot. Again, being in Florida, Epcot originally had very little character presence. It had very little traditional Disney IP. When it first opened, it was focused significantly more on a good story, which was the world and the different countries around the world. To me, from what you've said, from what I've read, and from what I've seen, Fantasy Springs is we'll call it the Disneyfying of Disney Sea. It is a way to bring in more of the iconic characters that don't necessarily tie to the sea theme. And I think that's partially what the locals are fighting against. They were so good, Disney Sea was so good at their storytelling when they first started and creating these multi-level immersive worlds that when you say, okay, now we have to wait, people love Peter Pan, or people love Frozen. We got to throw that in there somehow. It becomes, I won't call it an overlay. That's not fair, but it becomes more focused on that that ornament versus the entire Christmas tree. It becomes more focused on that element versus the overarching theme. And when people have fallen in love with that overarching theme, the same thing happened at Epcot when all of a sudden, even though Frozen at Epcot, the Frozen ride experience is a significantly more fun experience and attraction, and people who didn't know the original with the trolls and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But even when that changed, there was a huge outcry saying, you're trying to put in something that is simply there to make a buck, as opposed to trying to tell the original story or stick with the original concept. So I think they're suffering a little bit from that. So no matter how good it is, there's always going to be that initial guest response, that knee-jerk guest response of, well, yes, but it's not what you set out to do, and it's not what I fall in love with. Given time, we'll call them the little girls of Arendelle, will be, enamored with it and couldn't care less, and they'll bring their children, and it will have been forgotten that there was ever this division or this different route, this different augmentation of the initial brand. Anytime there is change, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So that's to be understood. And it's also Disney Sea opened when, Philip? Do you remember? Because I don't.
I don't. Well, let me check.
I know you're going to look, but anyway, there's also the opening of a park and the expansion of a park has different pockets, different depths to pockets. Anyway,
2001.
Even 2001. So
not very
over
old.
20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a young park, but yeah.
Well, generally speaking, it is, but 2001 is still over 20 years ago.
Yep.
So the finances pre-COVID.
Yep.
There's a lot of issues that you have to put in there. So it sounds to me, just anecdotally, from what I've heard, from what I've read, it sounds to me that they are trying to get, they're listening to their guests in that, and probably more their tourism guests than their local guests, but they're listening to their guests saying, okay, we need more recognizable characters for the Munchkins. This is. In the theme park world, you've often heard me say stroller moms rule the world. So this is stroller moms saying, yes, but we need a place where we can see, Anna and Elsa. We need a place where Tinkerbell can fly. We need a place where, all these different elements that we want to share with our children. Because let's face it, in families, moms make the decisions. So that's what it sounds like to me. I can't guarantee that is indeed the case. But it sounds like, from what you've told me and from what I've seen, it sounds like a valiant effort, but still not to the depth and level of the original installation.
Yeah, I agree with all. I'm not trying to say that it's necessarily bad or not. I think I'm just trying to document and report on it. It does to me seem like I agree overall with the thesis of the locals that it is kind of EV'd. And I will say that, like, all that being said, it's not worse than the U.S. parks. So I think it might be one of those things where it's like good enough, considering the post-COVID era where you need to, budgets are tighter right now for expansions because people are still recovering, especially in Asia. We talked about that. So I think that I think if you were to take this land and plop it down, into an American park, people would love it and they wouldn't even notice. I think it's really just because of the context of, you can, you're like, oh, a bridge over water, but the locals are like, well, how this could have been done is, you could walk under you have two levels and the bridge is a separate level and you can walk under it. And you're like, well, and
to be honest, American tourists may prefer it because they won't have to climb as much. So who knows? It depends on what you're used to. It depends on what your style is. I think that, when things change, that's when we always have the biggest either positive or negative reaction, because they recognize the change. As things stick around, as I mentioned earlier, nobody will remember it. The controversy of the addition or the change, just like it happened with Epcot.
Yep. Well, also very briefly on that is just also at Disney Sea is their food festival, which I just thought was interesting just to touch on very, very briefly, because it is done. It's the same concept in that it's a food festival, but it's pretty different in that there's really not that it's not like it's in just one area, and there's maybe like 5 or 6 dishes. It's not a very large thing. And I'm not sure if that's more successful or not, because it seemed like at least 2 of the dishes always had a line, one of which was always half an hour. And it was clearly the best item, because obviously I tried all of them, because that's how I am. And then if you just consider the conversion rate too, I mean, each item is about like $4 to $5. I'm not sure. I think it's still pretty expensive for Japanese standards, but not crazy, and so it was just a little bit of a different approach, where it's less items, and a little bit tighter in that way, so that everyone could try everything if they wanted to in a short amount of time, and less of a crazy sticker shock. But there's no passport or anything. Just buy what you want. So.
Well, and I'm going to make a statement here that I think is going to probably make somebody very angry, but I think food festivals are dead. 'Tis the season of food festivals here in the U.S., and I have been to many parks over the last month that are all having food festivals. And I will say there are 2 main problems with food festivals, and it sounds as though the one at Disney Sea has at least addressed, I won't say answered or found the solution, but the number one problem is, as you mentioned, the number one problem is cost. You say $4 to $5 per item. And in the U.S., what I have been experiencing is anywhere from 12
like
to 20.
Yeah.
12 to 20. I haven't seen much. I haven't seen much lower than 10. In fact, I've seen nothing lower than 10.
I think some of the items in
and these are
California
not
are $9 for like a dessert or a main item, but the drinks are definitely 12.
not in San Diego. Not in San Diego. So there's that problem. And number 2, I think that instead of, because the bloom is off the rose, instead of really focusing on creating those signature dishes that are wonderful and unique that people want to actually wait in queue for. One of the parks I went to, I referred to it as nachos around the world, because it was basically some form of chip with something that was. My favorite was the Irish nachos, which is potato chips covered in corned beef and pickled cabbage. And first of all, that doesn't even sound good. But secondly, it doesn't even sound Irish. So it's those Americanizations of Irish foods. And I would say that maybe this is just an old guy being crotchety, but I'm looking at the kiosks that have been set up for these festivals that are sitting empty. They have workers there. Usually 2 per kiosk and 0 queue. So between the pricing and the uniqueness, I won't even say the quality, the uniqueness of the product, it's not enough to make a food festival. So based on what I'm seeing this year here in the States, I'm going to say that unless you can overcome and create something that is so unique, people want to experience, have to experience, it's sort of the being in Florida, I call it the Florida State Fair. Every year at the Florida State Fair, there is some food truck that comes up with something that is so outlandish. Things in the past have been like the Krispy Kreme hamburger, or the deep fried Oreos years and years ago, or something like that. You have to come up with something that is so outlandish that people can't get it anywhere else. They have to come and experience the event. I will also see that I have also seen that the entertainment offerings surrounding these festivals are reduced. They're still there, and the quality is still there. There's just less of them. So and again, this is anecdotal. I'm sure that somebody can, comment and say, well, our park made blah, 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 blah. But anecdotally looking at them, there's empty kiosks. The prices are too high, and the uniqueness of the items being offered are really not that. Nobody really wants poke bowl nachos.
So. I agree with you on everything. I think that right now, now that we're back, like we said, we're normalizing. I think consumers are looking back, and they're kind of looking like, well, what's the value here? Convince us that we need to, like, why would we go buy all this stuff in the park? Like, why? Instead of enjoying the park, you're standing in lines and waiting for food. Like, you could just go to a street vendor, or there's so many food festivals that are just better food festivals anywhere, in any city, anywhere. And I think that's always been when I was at the Disneyland one before I left for Asia, we didn't even buy anything because we would prefer to go to the restaurants because it has better food and it's cheaper.
That's
And you can,
exactly what I've seen. That is
you can buy
exactly
a
what I've
whole
seen.
meal for like $18, like an actual like meal, I think I got the smothered burrito, I think for something like $18. And I mean, that was a much better value than buying like 2 or 3 small portions. But yeah, what I noticed about the one at Disney Sea is that the items are cheaper, and the main signature item was the one that everyone was waiting for, which is a sweet potato sundae, which it was incredible, and it was one of those things where the sweet potatoes were shaped like Mickey's, so they had like cut out sweet potatoes to be like Mickey's, and then baked them, and then put them in a sundae with like lychee and syrup, and it was crazy, and it was delicious. And all the other items though were done in a way where they were still good. They had like roasted carrots, with chutney and whatnot, but like it only had one person at each booth because all of them were really easy to plate. So like the roast potatoes were already pre-plated and they would just hand them to you. And then the drink cart was, like in Asia, they have a lot of like fruit drinks, whatever, like a horchata, but an Asian version. But so they had like the stuff at the bottom and they would just fill it with the soda or the alcohol. And so one person can man the booth, right? So it's very quick and easy. And so it moves faster and it's cheaper. That's what I noticed. Those are the things I noticed about the ones at Disney Sea.
Yep.
But okay, let's see. Another really quick thing. Really, I'm just confused by it. To just get Scott to take on it really quick. But Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando has announced our first 5 mazes. We know that they are going to do 10 houses, and they've announced that the first 5 already. All 5 are original IPs. Personally, I always love the original stories houses. I think that they're always very creative, and I think these are actually very creative, actually, and they seem to me to touch on all the fandoms, which I think isn't. I just, if you look at this, you're like, oh, this is smart. Whoever put this together is smart. You got the Triplets of Terror, which is, I would say, they're tapping into the American Horror Story type thing. Monstrous is coming from Hollywood, which is finally something it's tapping into a culture, that's Latin American culture, which is great. Good on them. Excellent idea. They have the museum, which it's been a while since we've seen anything inside of a museum, which is great because, just, and then the Candy Factory and the Goblin's Feast is kind of like a LARPing gone wrong type of thing. So I think the ideas are great. What's interesting to me, I want to get Scott's perspective, is this is very unusual. They have never led with original stories before. And also the announcement, like, series is way off. Like, the way they've been doing it previously the last several years is like one house a week or something like that. And they dropped all 5 in like a little more than a week, and they're all original. So it's really strange. I'm like, are they just doing this to stay in the news? I mean, what's going on?
Well, Universal, and this is my own opinion, but from what I've seen, Universal's really noisy right now when it comes to the news, between Epic and the new family park and so
like
they
every
have
week
to.
we
So
have an
Halloween
article
Horror
about
Nights,
them. Yeah,
correct, but that's because they want to be 100% in the forefront. And we've learned that news cycles are significantly shorter than they used to be, so they have to keep throwing stuff out to continue to be top of mind. This, you say they've never done this before, but this was an approach that they did years and years ago. Everything old is new again. It's cycling back. They used to lead, as you said, they used to lead completely with their IP stories and their IP haunts. It was like, let's get that out in front. I think what's happened is, people are like, the IPs have, for some reason, either not lived up to our expectations or don't or show a lack of creativity. So now the pendulum has swung back, and they're back to the non-IP haunts. I will say I agree with you. I'm so excited to see the Monsters of Latin America. I think that is great. It's tapping into a market that is that they've dabbled in before. Is it what's the female character that lives in the lake that takes children? Yes, they did that. They did that years ago, and now they're coming back and coming back with a much more much more robust approach, at least from a visual standpoint. But you said we haven't seen a museum in a while, so that's come back. Sweet shop, candy factory. They did one of those, and the only reason I know it is because I wrote it. But they did one of those in San Antonio a few years ago, or 2 years ago at SeaWorld.
And
so that's coming back
last year. So they've just expanded it into a house, which is fine. It must have mean that. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. But I will say the thing I like about it is it's showing a great deal of variety. But to your point originally is why now? Why so much? To me, I won't call it desperation, but let's call it a desire to stay in the news throughout the short media cycle. Because if you look at it, they're announcing they're and it looks like it's pretty well orchestrated throughout the entire Universal media empire. Is that we'll get a notice about something from Epic, and then we'll get a notice about something from the family park, and then we'll get a notice about Halloween Horror Nights, and then we'll get a note. I haven't heard a whole lot about the Vegas project, but we'll see that shortly, I'm sure. But I think the idea here is there is so much, and Universal is so noisy right now in the media that they have to make certain that when they announce things, they have to be enough to cut through that noise. And to me, that's why they've done this. It has gone back to the pendulum has swung back, I guess, is really my take on it. And I think that it's a good thing. I think they have to find new ways, and if they can't find new ways, they have to find old ways that people have forgotten. Yep. So, and that's what it seems like to me, is that the pendulum has just swung back now to the non-IPs, and then when they get closer, because the non-IPs, the people who are looking for long lead are people who are into the haunt industry, people who really love haunted attractions.
You're right.
They're going to be much more passionate about the non-intellectual property. They're going to be more passionate about the new and unique stuff that is cool and focused on, that you can only experience at Halloween Horror Nights. So that's what these are. And then when they get closer, that's when you get the more casual Halloween or Halloween Horror Nights guests, what I call the beer drinking crowd. They're the ones who are going to care more about what movie can I go and experience now? So to me, it makes sense.
I concede the point about the different audiences. I do think, though, it feels like they tried to walk a middle ground, but I'm not sure it worked for them, if that's the thing, because the first announcement they made, everyone picked it up, national news everywhere. And then it was like they waited a day, and then it was like they dropped it out like every other day. And you're not going to get another national news story for all the other ones. But what the haunters were doing, obviously all the haunt media makes a video for everything, but the national news is only going to do one, And so I was like, to me, it's like, well, if the goal was to get the national news, you should have just put all 5 out at once for the national news and just let the haunters do whatever they were going to do, but, I don't know. I don't know. It was.
These houses are targeted to the haunters. These houses are targeted to the haunt media.
Well, I guess in this case, they did get both. Like, they got all the national news stories because everyone picked up at least the first house. And then they also got the haunters because the haunters then made like 5 videos because they're going to make one for each house, right?
Hey, we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So we're talking about it.
Let's jump. Since we're getting so close to time, let's jump to the last one, which is something I just wanted to mention that came out this week. So there is a YouTuber called Jenny Nicholson. She made a video, a glorious video this week called the Spectacular Failure of the Star Wars Hotel. And it kind of has caught the internet by storm this week. It is 4 hours. So we're talking like 2 movies here, and it already has 4.7 million views, and it has been picked up by national news all around, talking about it. And I haven't made it through the entire thing, but it is an excellent video, and I really suggest our audience go and watch at least pieces of it, because there was so much that I didn't know. And this is like, I'm in it, and I didn't know. Just her ability to put it, it's so well reported and documented, just really understanding the history of this project. And to me, the most interesting pieces have been what Disney said about it and how they really couldn't figure out how to market it to the right people or who it was for or how that. And she plays all, she you'll see the commercials that Disney deleted and all this and all that. You'll see all these little bits in there. I think the marketing section is most interesting section, but I think it's very, especially for our audience, I think you guys would all enjoy just seeing the larger picture and having someone put it together for you. This, 5-decade long story or whatever. It's excellent. And I also think it's really funny in our age that, almost 5 million people are going to have watched something for just, it's already been closed and now they're going to watch 4 hours on it. Yeah. I don't know. It's just, it's heartening, right? Because we're always talking about how, they're not going to watch anything, blah, blah, blah. And here's like a 4-hour documentary about this thing that never going to get to see. It doesn't matter, but everyone's going to watch it. I don't know. I find it hard.
Well, and I think, more people are going to see this video than actually experienced the
yes,
experience.
way more.
Yeah. But I think what's important for us and what's important for viewers, and it's really something that we touched on sort of anecdotally when it first opened, and that was who is going to go to this? Who is the audience? And clearly, Disney never figured it out either.
No.
So who knows? But for our audiences, as you say, Philip, it's very important. I've just started watching it. Philip just made me aware of it, and I've just started to dive in, and I'm curious to see what the takes are and what the uniqueness of it is. Obviously, it shows that content creators do have power, and it shows that from even the top line brief that I've looked through it, that marketing for major parks has not quite picked up on how to make things work within the new realm and the new world of media, which is clearly the independent content creator. So hopefully all the independent content creators are watching these two content creators, and hopefully you'll continue to do so. And the next time you get a chance to do that is next week, because we're out of time. So on behalf of Philip Hernandez with Haunted Attraction Network and Gantom Lighting, and myself, Scott Swenson with Scott Swenson Creative Development, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30, and we will see you next week.